Early one autumn morning, an unassuming young man named Elliot stepped off the bus in front of the local library, adjusting the strap of his worn olive green backpack. The building loomed large and stately, its brick facade glowing faintly orange in the rising sun. Elliot always felt drawn to the library at this hour, partly because he loved the smell of old books, and partly because the few people he encountered at dawn rarely tried to engage him in conversation. He was shy by nature, a quiet observer rather than a confident participant in life's grand play, and he found a comforting anonymity amidst the stacks of stories. Although he yearned for deeper connections, he had never quite mastered small talk. There was something about forging personal bonds that both terrified and intrigued him. However, that day, as he trudged inside, he had no idea he was about to meet someone who would change his life forever. He walked through the library's heavy double doors, heard them click shut behind him, and allowed the silence to envelop him like a favorite blanket. As he ventured in, scanning his surroundings with cautious curiosity, the familiar librarian waved a tentative greeting. Elliot managed a small nod, but quickly averted his gaze. He made his way toward the far corner, where a ring of plush armchairs was set around a large wooden table. Usually nobody was there that early, which guaranteed Elliot a lonely oasis to sit and read in peace. But that morning, to his surprise, he found someone else already there. A boy with tousled dark hair, perhaps 10 or 11 years old. The child sat hunched over a thick spiral notebook, scribbling away with an air of deep concentration. Elliot paused. On any other day, he might have discreetly found another corner. Solitude was his fortress, after all, but there was something magnetic about the scene in front of him. The boy's unwavering focus, the quick flick of his pencil over the page, and the silent intensity that hovered around him all captivated Elliot. With nervous caution, he settled into a chair one seat away. He opened his own book, heart fluttering with a mix of curiosity and anxiety, then sneaked a glance at the boy. He noticed numbers, diagrams, and strange, almost artistic patterns filling the pages. Realizing the boy was not merely idly doodling, but seemed to be calculating something quite complex, Elliot felt a flicker of intrigue. He unconsciously leaned closer, attempting to decipher symbols that reminded him of advanced mathematics. The boy abruptly stopped writing and turned to lock eyes with Elliot. For one long moment, neither spoke. The child's face bore a guarded expression, as though he had been disturbed in a private realm he had never intended to share. Elliot felt heat rising to his cheeks, and he fumbled for words of apology, but the boy merely lowered his gaze and muttered something inaudible. Then he resumed his scribbling, though more tentatively than before. Elliot recognized the boy's isolation. In a small flash of introspection, he remembered the bitter sting of feeling conspicuous for being different, for thinking differently, for never knowing exactly where to fit in. He wanted to say something, if only a friendly greeting, but the thought of speaking hammered a jolt of panic through his mind. He fidgeted instead, feigning distraction with his book for long minutes before he finally mustered the courage to address the boy. "Hey," he said, his voice unusually soft even in the hush of the library. "That looks really complicated. Are you, um, working on math problems?" The boy seemed startled by the break in silence. After a moment, he grudgingly nodded and pushed his notebook a little farther away from prying eyes. "Yeah," he mumbled, not making further conversation. His barrier was clearly up. But Elliot wasn't ready to give up. Something in the boy's eyes reminded him of his own younger self. Always anxious, always on guard, always waiting to be judged. I'm I'm not the greatest at math, Elliot began, rummaging for a connection that just might soften the tension. "It used to scare me a lot when I was in school, but it looks like you're really good at it." For a few breaths, the child said nothing. Then he replied in a more coherent whisper, "I like numbers. They make sense to me." He pressed the eraser of his pencil to the page, then lifted it again, as if torn between wanting to hide his work and wanting to share it. "They don't change like people do." The statement echoed ominously in Elliot's mind. He recognized that quiet heartbreak, the fear of unpredictable human reactions. Elliot lowered his gaze and nodded in understanding. "What's your name?" he asked. "Cooper," the boy said, returning his eyes to the paper. Elliot smiled. "I'm Elliot. Nice to meet you." Elliot spent the remainder of that morning reading, occasionally sneaking glances at Cooper's notebook. The pages were strewn with mathematical complexities beyond Elliot's comprehension, and he found himself inexplicably odd. Cooper was a child prodigy, that much seemed clear, but he was also alone. Watching him chew his pencil eraser with tense concentration, Elliot felt an almost fraternal impulse to help. Throughout his life, Elliot had found that small acts of kindness often broke the barriers between people more effectively than elaborate gestures ever could. He wondered if he could approach Cooper with something simple, like asking if the boy wanted a cup of hot chocolate from the vending machine in the lobby. Ultimately, fear of rejection prevented him from doing more than offering a timid wave as he got up to leave. But that was not the end of their story. The next day, Elliot found himself drawn back to the library at the same early hour, half hoping to see Cooper again. This time, he braved a small brown paper bag containing 2 homemade granola bars. Elliot thought if he offered one to Cooper, maybe the gesture would serve as an olive branch. When he arrived at the same corner, he discovered the boy in the same chair as the day before, still scribbling furiously. Elliot took a small breath, approached, and quietly sat down. As before, Cooper tensed at the sudden presence, but didn't leave. Elliot reached into the paper bag and offered one granola bar wrapped in clear plastic. "My neighbor gave me these. She said she made too many." It was partially true. He had asked his neighbor for some extra morning snacks, after explaining in stumbling phrases that he wanted to share them with someone special. He had never referred to anyone that way before, but he realized the boy's loneliness resonated inside him like an echo of his own. If someone could meet him halfway in his time of need, maybe Elliot wouldn't have felt so isolated growing up. Cooper hesitated, his eyes darting between Elliot's earnest expression and the granola bar. Slowly, he reached out. "Thanks," he mumbled, then placed the snack on the table, seeming uncertain whether to open it or not. Elliot offered a quiet grin. He lifted a battered paperback from his backpack, settling into a comfortable slouch. For several minutes, they sat side by side in companionable silence. Just as the library awakened around them, a few patrons wandered in. The fluorescent lights flickered fully to life, and the faint hum of the air conditioning provided a soundscape. Gradually, Cooper unwrapped the bar, took a small bite, and mumbled another soft thanks. That gesture, small as it was, felt monumental to Elliot. Over the next few weeks, the encounters at the library became a tentative routine. Elliot would arrive, always a bit earlier than he might otherwise, half expecting to see Cooper in his usual spot. Most mornings, the boy was indeed there, hunched over his notebook, tackling advanced math problems that left Elliot baffled. They rarely spoke about personal matters in the beginning. Instead, they exchanged the occasional smile, shared a small snack, or commented on a particularly tricky equation Cooper was wrestling with. Little by little, a fragile bond started to form. Elliot discovered that Cooper visited the library so often because school bored him. Regular classes challenged neither his intellect nor his restless mind, and being around kids his own age left him feeling more alienated than ever. He wanted to explore calculus, physics, and programming languages most 11-year-olds couldn't even pronounce. His teachers didn't know how to handle his advanced abilities, and classmates often teased him, calling him a know-it-all and leaving him out of games. Through carefully pried questions and gentle assurances, Elliot began to uncover how lonely that brilliance had made Cooper. At the same time, Cooper began to learn about Elliot's life in subtle ways. Elliot's father was absent, having left the family years ago, and his mother struggled to make ends meet. Elliot had always had to be independent, which manifested in an over-reliance on solitude. He took community college classes at night, trying to figure out a direction for his future. He would sometimes study in the library or simply escape the busy scramble of the world outside. And though he never said it outright, Cooper gleaned that Elliot felt lost. They discovered a shared solace in their stoic personalities. Elliot marveled at Cooper's rigorous intellect, and in return, Cooper quietly admired Elliot's consistent kindness. On one bookmarks from the library morning, Elliot witnessed something that shattered the boy's already fragile confidence. A few teenagers from Cooper's school recognized him in the lobby and decided to harass him. One jostled his shoulder, another snickered about his nerd notebook, and a third even threatened to tear out his pages. Cooper froze, too scared to stand up for himself. Elliot's heart pounded with an unfamiliar surge of protectiveness. He stepped in, awkwardly placing himself between Cooper and the bullies, his hands trembling. "Leave him alone," Elliot said in a voice that was surprisingly steady, even to him. "What's wrong with you? You've nothing better to do than harass someone who's smarter than you." It was a sharper retort than Elliot typically managed. The bullies exchanged disgruntled looks, recognized Elliot was older, taller, and not backing down. After a few seconds of hesitation, they spat some parting insults and stomped away. Elliot's entire body shook with adrenaline. When he turned back, Cooper stood there, clutching his notebook to his chest, tears brimming in his eyes, though he fought valiantly not to let them fall. His lower lip quivered slightly. You didn't have to do that," he whispered. "They're just going to come after me again. Encourage them, and they get worse." Elliot raked a hand through his hair. "I know bullying doesn't just vanish overnight," he conceded, "but I can't stand by and let them treat you that way." Cooper tried to master a few unspoken emotions. Then, in a gesture so subtle that any bystander might have missed it, he stepped forward and pressed his forehead into Elliot's sweater, just for a second, like a child seeking a safe harbor. Elliot's heart twisted at the sensation, at once protective and deeply touched. "Thank you," Cooper muttered. "I've never really had anyone speak up for me." From that point onward, something shifted. The boundaries between them loosened. Elliot started driving Cooper home once a week after the library. He had an old beat-up car that rattled whenever it left second gear, but Cooper didn't seem to mind the noise. One cool afternoon, as Elliot made that short drive, he asked, "Is it okay if I walk you to your door? I'd like to say hello to your mom or dad." He had never actually met Cooper's family, and though the boy's face went tense for a moment, he ultimately nodded. Stepping inside Cooper's home felt surreal. The living room was tidy but austere. No pictures on the mantel, no art on the walls. Like the family avoided personalization. Cooper's mother emerged from the kitchen, face flushed from cooking. She greeted Elliot politely, though fatigue clouded her every gesture. Elliot noticed the signs, the half-empty coffee cups strewn about, the pile of unopened mail on the table. She worked 2 jobs, Cooper later confided, and barely had time to breathe. Despite being cordial, she appeared too burdened by day-to-day worries to invest heavily in Cooper's emotional or intellectual world. Standing there in the doorway, Elliot felt a pang of concern. This child had so many gifts, but so little support. He recounted to Cooper's mother, in a careful half-truth, that he'd taken an informal interest in helping Cooper with his advanced studies. She offered a tired smile, gratitude flashing across her eyes. "It's wonderful," she said. "I'm glad he has somebody he can count on." Elliot saw subdued relief in her features, as if she worried every day about Cooper's isolation, but could do little except keep food on the table and a roof overhead, and realized he too understood that sense of adult responsibility, overshadowing personal dreams. He was navigating the cusp of adulthood, balancing part-time work and class, trying to fill the gap left behind by his absent father. As the weeks turned into months, Cooper's and Elliot's bond deepened. Elliot would help Cooper explore geometry theorems or watch videos about famous physicists, even though much of what they learned was far beyond Elliot's initial comprehension. Yet, ironically, Elliot found himself inspired, almost invigorated by Cooper's thirst for knowledge. In the process of trying to support Cooper, Elliot's own world expanded. He began to see how passionately pursuing a subject could give life meaning. Elliot had never found that spark in high school, drifting through his days as though waiting for something to ignite him. Now, watching Cooper's face light up at the mention of fractals or quantum states, Elliot realized that maybe his own path to fulfillment lay in helping others discover their best selves. He had always been shy. Even at community college, he avoided clubs or group projects whenever possible. But at the library, as he accompanied Cooper to various sections, eagerly checking out advanced textbooks and DVDs, he discovered an unexpected comfort in this new role. Their quiet library sessions evolved into more free-flowing discussions about science, life, and everything in between. Elliot learned to ask questions that helped Cooper articulate concepts in simpler terms, and in turn, Cooper's vantage point on the universe filled Elliot with awe. Cooper might have been a lonely genius, but around Elliot, he was simply a kid with an insatiable curiosity. Along the way, Elliot also witnessed Cooper grappling with the bruises forced upon him by frustrated peers who felt threatened by his intelligence. Sometimes Cooper would come in with a tear in his backpack or a note scrawled on his locker reading nerd. He tried to shrug it off, burying himself in equations, but Elliot understood that these small wounds cut deep. With gentle persistence, Elliot began encouraging Cooper to talk about his feelings and to find small ways to defend himself, reporting bullying incidents or seeking counsel from a trustworthy teacher. Elliot's shy warmth became a pillar of comfort in Cooper's life. And more often than not, just sensing Elliot's presence bolstered the boy's courage. Friendship wasn't a one-way street. Elliot might never have guessed how much he'd gained from knowing Cooper. In a sense, Cooper's vision of the world was so crisp and methodical that it rubbed off on Elliot, clarifying thoughts he never knew how to express. Cooper didn't realize it at first, but by explaining math concepts or scientific theories to Elliot, he was helping his older friend see new possibilities for his future. "You're really good at using examples, walking me through the logic," Elliot once admitted after ending up enthralled by some mesmerizing fractal images Cooper showed him. "Have you ever considered teaching or speaking in front of others?" Cooper's cheeks flared red. "No way," he said, fiddling with the spiral of his notebook. "I'm terrified of speaking in front of groups. I get bullied for just raising my hand. Imagine if I tried to stand up and lecture." "Yeah," Elliot murmured, acknowledging the fear. "I'm not suggesting it would be easy, but you never know. If you find something you love enough, sometimes you can channel that passion to overcome your shyness. It's kind of what happened to me. I used to not speak at all, but lately, I've felt a little braver." Cooper blinked. "You feel braver because of me?" A faint smile crossed Elliot's face. "Yeah. Helping you has given me courage I never had before, and maybe you can find that same courage in the things you love." A hush fell between them, not of awkwardness, but of mutual understanding. Something in Cooper's eyes glimmered, an ember of hope. And in that silent exchange across the library table, both realized their bond ran deep, bridging an age gap, bridging emotional wounds, and forging a safe place to grow. As winter approached, Cooper found himself compelled to take a small step beyond his comfort zone. The local science club was holding a fair at the community center, encouraging students to present research or experiments. It wasn't a school-sponsored event, so Cooper reasoned fewer classmates would be around to ridicule him. He mentioned the idea to Elliot, fidgeting with the hem of his jacket, eyes uncertain. "I'm not sure I can handle the attention," he said softly, "even if it's only 2 or 3 judges. But, well, maybe it'd be a good learning experience. I've never really shown my work to anyone but you." Elliot felt pride swell in his chest. This was exactly the kind of breakthrough he had wished for the boy, to believe in himself. "I think you should do it," Elliot said gently. "I'll help you however I can. We can plan your presentation, practice whatever you need." Cooper swallowed, then nodded with a timid half smile. "Okay." They spent weeks preparing for the fair. Cooper decided to demonstrate the mathematics behind fractals, tying it into nature's hidden patterns. Elliot watched in awe as the boy compiled images of snowflakes, leaf veins, and spiral shells. Cooper's explanation grew clearer each time he rehearsed, until even Elliot, who initially had only a broad grasp of the subject, understood the beauty of fractal geometry. Cooper learned to speak slowly, punctuating his speech with a laser pointer aimed at displayed images. Elliot played the role of supportive audience, gently critiquing his pacing or reminding him to speak up. He saw in Cooper the seeds of resilience and self-confidence germinating before his eyes. The day of the science fair arrived in mid-December, bringing with it flurries of snow and swirling anticipation. The room was crowded with participants arranging colorful posters, plugging in laptops, and tinkering with last-minute adjustments to homegrown experiments. Thin strips of fluorescent light illuminated the space, giving it a cozy yet bustling vibe. Elliot accompanied Cooper, helping him carry a poster board carefully drawn with fractal diagrams, a laptop for slides, and a small arrangement of pine cones to demonstrate nature's spiral patterns. For the first hour, Cooper stood stiffly near his exhibit, trying to hold onto his resolve as curious onlookers wandered by. Elliot hovered a few feet behind, neither intruding nor abandoning him. Cooper spoke quietly to the first visitors, explaining fractals with shaky hands but gaining confidence each time he got through the explanation. By the third or fourth group, his voice held a steady ring of self-assurance. Elliot observed with pride swelling in his chest, remembering the timid boy who once mumbled, "Numbers don't change like people do." Now Cooper was the one changing, stepping out of his comfort zone and shining. Somewhere around midday, the judges made their rounds. Cooper took a deep breath, launching into his presentation. His small voice rose in volume, words articulate and precise. He guided them through the slides with calm composure. Although Elliot noticed a slight tremble in the child's hand, Cooper never lost focus. When it was over, the judges smiled, thanked him, and moved on. Elliot had to restrain himself from hugging the boy right then and there. Instead, he simply patted Cooper gently on the back. When the results were announced, Cooper ended up placing second in the fair, a remarkable feat among so many high school participants, and he didn't quite know how to process it. Standing on the podium with a certificate in hand, scanning the small crowd for Elliot's familiar face. As soon as Cooper saw Elliot clapping and smiling broadly, that last bit of anxiety faded, and a wide grin broke across the boy's face. In that moment, they both recognized how far he had come. In the weeks following the fair, a gradual but definite change took hold in Cooper. He wasn't miraculously popular, but he displayed a newfound willingness to engage with teachers and classmates at school. He sought help from mentors for some advanced coursework, ventured to approach a few fellow students who showed interest in science, and even joined an after-school coding club. Although the threat of bullies still lingered, Cooper no longer shouldered it entirely alone. He realized that, with or without their approval, he possessed an ability and identity that were worth defending. As for Elliot, his own transformation was equally profound. He found the courage to apply to a four-year college, something he had been too intimidated to consider seriously before. Watching Cooper embrace his talents inspired Elliot to believe in his own capacity to dream bigger. Perhaps he could become a teacher one day, or a mentor, or work at a nonprofit that nurtured gifted yet isolated youth. The possibilities he once discarded as unattainable now shimmered with promise. With that new conviction, Elliot approached the next steps in his life with determined energy. He balanced part-time work and began studying for the necessary exams. He tracked down scholarships and grants, humbly asking for help from advisors and mentors, no longer afraid to admit he needed guidance. Each day, he found himself grateful for the quiet boy who had unknowingly lit a spark inside him. Time moved forward, each morning still bringing Elliot and Cooper together at the library, though now their roles felt more like companions than guardians or mentees. They would share random bits from books they found, discuss the latest science documentaries they watched, or navigate the rest of life's uncertainties side by side. A sense of peace settled over them each time they occupied their favorite corner in those well-worn chairs. One day, on a breezy weekend, Cooper flagged Elliot down outside. The child appeared with a small, carefully wrapped package in his hands. He thrust it toward Elliot, cheeks glowing. It's, just a thank you, he explained faintly, averting his eyes as though shy about the gesture. You didn't just help me with math. You helped me feel happier, less alone. Elliot's eyes glistened. He carefully unwrapped the package to reveal a notebook, similar to the one Cooper always used. Except on the inside of the front cover, Cooper had neatly written, "To Elliot, thank you for being the friend I never knew I needed." The inscription was followed by a small fractal doodleless swirl, reminiscent of that day at the science fair. Elliot swallowed hard, tears prickling at the corners of his vision. He had never felt so genuinely appreciated in his life. He placed a hand on Cooper's shoulder. You saved me too, you know, Elliot said, voice thick with emotion. I used to feel invisible and unimportant, but ever since I met you, I've realized I can do more with my life than just hide away. Thank you for that. Cooper nodded, words lost but eyes shining. For a moment, the two simply stood there, letting the crisp weather swirl around them, leaves dancing at their feet. They had both spent so much time feeling alone, walled off by fears and insecurities. Yet in each other, they had found not just companionship, but also a mirror, reflecting back the best parts they had yet to fully see in themselves in the intersection of those two worlds. And so it was that two strangers, one shy young man looking for meaning, and one gifted but isolated boy craving understanding, found what they needed in each other's quiet presence. In their shared devotion to learning and mutual acts of simple kindness, they gradually dismantled the walls that had kept them apart from the world. The best friendships, as they discovered, aren't always forged in loud excitement or immediate declarations. Sometimes they bloom in hushed corners and thoughtful conversations, in wordless moments of support and understanding. Months later, Elliot would send off his college applications with renewed faith in what he could accomplish, stepping boldly into the uncertain future. Cooper, in turn, would greet each new challenge, academic or social, with a nuanced confidence he had never known before. Whenever doubt tried to creep in, he remembered the look of unwavering encouragement in Elliot's eyes that winter afternoon at the science fair. It was more than enough to keep him pressing forward. Life had not suddenly become perfect for either of them. Adulthood still beckoned with financial obstacles and emotional tribulations for Elliot, while Cooper continued to navigate middle school drama and the burdens of being far more advanced than his peers. But they marched on, side by side in spirit, buoyed by the type of bond that quietly, persistently changes everything. Through deliberate dedication and a willingness to be vulnerable, they had shaped each other's destinies. Their separate paths intersected at just the right moment in time, bridging the void left by isolation and bringing about the joy of genuine connection. And neither Elliot nor Cooper would ever forget that simple truth, that sometimes it only takes a small opening of one's heart in the right place and at the right time to find a friendship that can save a life. For in that library corner, surrounded by musty books and the ordinary hush of early morning, they discovered an extraordinary gift, a chance to stand together, remind each other of their worth, and reshape the course of each other's stories forever.